Welcome to Deep Thought. Much knowledge is outside the mainstream. Much knowledge is outside the mainstream. You know what? I'm going to start this with a story. I remember this was late 80s, and it was a store in D.C. on Georgia Avenue, Northwest D.C., over near Howard University. It was called Pyramid Bookstore. And I remember I went in there. Well, one, because there was a woman who was fine. Man, she was fat to death, you know. And so she worked there. So I was checking her out. Good Lord. You know what? Just as an aside, y'all know I go on tangents on this channel. There's so many things I got into because it was like 5 women associated with. But I'm glad because of it. Anyway, I went into the bookstore. You know, back then, this was late 80s. It didn't have like the popular black books then. It had more of the esoteric stuff, stuff from other spiritual groups. Might have had some books from black Muslim sects in there. And, you know, I went in there, you know, to check out the woman, of course. She wasn't giving brother no Play-Doh, but she was cool with me. Let's just be friends. But anyway, I remember there was a gentleman in there talking, and I think, looking back now, I think he was connected with the Yoruba sect in the African traditional religion. And it wasn't as big, but late 80s, they weren't as big as they would become or as well known during that time. So anyway, he was having a conversation with somebody else, so I was kind of ear hustling. And he was talking about some herbs that someone could take in order to clear out their entire system to make them well. And of course, when I heard it, it wasn't like I jumped on it right away because I was like, that's crazy. Don't we have to take some of these other pills and everything? It'd probably be another decade or so before I got truly open to all of that. But, and I look back at it and I was like, you know, that's some legitimate knowledge. Indeed, I know someone who can, he can go out on a field in the middle of a highway and find edible things and medicinal stuff. But here's the thing. That's when I was truly introduced about knowledge that was outside of mainstream knowledge. And there's a lot of stuff. Understand something. The knowledge that's out there, the knowledge that's presented in schools, the knowledge in most of the books that are popular only represents a small view of what's truly out there. It represents a very small view. You know, there's a lot of stuff that's out of the mainstream. Indeed, there's a lot of things that was presented in the mainstream when, like, back in the 30s and stuff. You know, I was talking with some elders and they were talking about the things they were learning at school. And it went beyond what students might learn now or even in my generation. And, you know, it was like, oh, wow, you had all of this. But see, what happens is much knowledge is removed. Because understand something about the education system. The education system is very politically motivated. Like you have the big thing now about schools removing any discussion about critical race theory. That's a political move right there. So any knowledge of stuff is removed from the mainstream or stuff that happens. Or here's another example. The racial massacre in Tulsa in 1921. I didn't first hear about it until the early 90s. It was a woman at a bookstore. She was talking about it. That's the first time I heard anything. Now, this was in the early 90s. I throw the year 1991 out. All right. You notice a lot of people didn't know anything about it at all, like on a general scale until recently. And it was actually that TV show, The Watchmen, that really opened people's eyes to it. That was a part of the storyline. And then people say, oh, no, this actually happened. So think about it. There's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of things that happen that don't make the history books. In fact, this gentleman, Howard Zinn, he had wrote a book, The People's History of the United States. And he talked about a lot of stuff that's not taught in schools. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of things that's happening in a lot of history. There's a lot of knowledge. There are healing modalities that are not taught necessarily in a medical school. There are herbal things out there that can actually help someone with any disease. Indeed, all of these pharmaceuticals and everything, yeah, they're chemical. People made them up, but all of them are based on something natural. Indeed, is a viable knowledge of just knowing what to eat right can help you with a lot of dis-ease, can help your body function at this thing, but it's not talked about as much. Well, why? Of course, somebody's making money off of it. You know, you have for political reasons, primarily for economic reasons, depending on who's the dominant economic force in a particular industry. Things are kept from the public. Things are kept. It's believed that there are natural remedies for every single disease now. Even something like HIV, HIV and AIDS, they're technically two different things. And someone would say, well, how come they're not talking about it? Well, somebody wouldn't make money. There's a lot of money being made. But it's believed it's there, but it's outside of the mainstream. See, that mainstream, one thing about the mainstream is very much controlled. If you look at the major religions, that's a control mechanism. The government, like you get a lot of people who say they don't want to vote and everything. Politicians are very powerful. Politicians are very powerful, and they can affect. They can actually affect what's going on, what's taught, what's not taught. And they affect business. They can, a simple law can make a business legal. Like, for example, the cannabis industry is raising up. I don't know what state it is, but I think a 21st state has legalized recreational cannabis, legal weed. And that's actually affecting the economies or something. And that's all just a politician thing, And then, of course, you got the corporations and stuff. They exercise a lot of power. If you look at a corporation, I'll use Amazon for an example. The Amazon, they can dictate the economy of huge regions now. Because in some cases, they might be the only business. Seriously. There's about, within reasonable driving distance of me, there's like 2 Amazon facilities just within 20 minutes driving distance of where I live. That's a powerful thing. That affects their local economy, So you got all these forces. They want things to move according to a certain thing. So they'll keep knowledge out of the public eye, and it gets deep. It gets deep. That way, when you come across something different, they don't even, I'm going to be real. It's so deep and so powerful. They say, hey, you can go find all this other stuff. There's alternative stuff that's not part of the mainstream. We don't care. And you can even have some people who adhere to it. We don't care because we have so much control over the overall thing. We're good with it. Indeed, here's something deep for to think about. We want it to be there because there's always going to be somebody who goes against the system. We need some place for them to go into, too. I ain't even going to get into that right now. Normally, I do that the next episode. Yeah, might do that in a future one when y'all not expecting it. So anyway, that's all I got for now. I want y'all to think on what I'm saying. Talk to y'all later. Peace and blessings.